I am witnessing in real time how an entire country is beginning to dismantle what it built over more than half a century. I am deeply concerned about what is happening in the United States, and I am concerned that the President of the United States says he will not give money to universities until they change their way of thinking. This is not an academic discussion. It is not a legitimate debate between different perspectives. It is a mafia-like warning disguised as public policy. It is the explicit threat of starving science until science, desperate, says what power wants to hear. This is extremely dangerous. Just as now universities must have a different opinion about Israel to receive financial funding from the president, it could also happen tomorrow, or the day after, or next week, that politicians force universities and scientists to change their opinion about transgender and non-binary people. There is no limit once it is accepted that knowledge depends on blackmail. We are already almost at the edge, almost at the brink, of having the rights achieved through more than 50 years of struggle completely dismantled. Not because science has discovered something new, not because research has found evidence contrary to what was already known, but because governments are starving scientists. That brutal, that primitive, that ruthless. Many of those scientists have already emigrated to other countries. Some managed to escape. Some decided they were not going to wait until everything was taken away from them. But not everyone can. There are those who want to stay in their country, who feel that fleeing would be a betrayal of their vocation, their land, their people. And those, at the end of the day, will have no choice but to deny things they affirmed as true just a few days ago. Not because their convictions have changed, but because, without resources, without funding, without the minimum possibility of continuing their research, there is no room to resist. It is lamentable to see how political power, by cutting financial resources, is trying to change science as if science were a servitude that can be bent or unfolded according to the convenience of the master of the moment. Now, everything depends on the resistance those scientists can offer, or the desperation that ends up breaking them, or the forced submission that, disguised as reasoning, as updating, or as new evidence, ends up prevailing. It would not be the first time in history that this happens, and everything indicates it will not be the last. It is very likely that the scientific reality of transgender and non-binary people will be sacrificed in order to allow other scientific studies to continue. Not because someone has proven the contrary, but because surviving under these conditions demands brutal concessions. Science should not have to beg for its existence. Science should not be a hostage. But today in the United States, it is exactly that, a hostage. It is said that money makes the monkey dance, and although many would prefer to think otherwise, reality ultimately confirms it. When a living being is deprived of what is essential, be it food, freedom, or dignity, sooner or later it will yield to whoever controls what it needs to survive. It is not a question of moral weakness. It is not a lack of courage. It is not cowardice. It is the physical condition of existence pushed to the limit. At first, the animal will resist. It will try to maintain its instinct, its pride, or its rebellion. But as hunger progresses, as despair grows, it will begin to obey, to adapt, to deny even what it once defended fiercely. Not because it changed its ideas, but because the body, at the limit of its strength, demands a minimum to continue existing. This does not happen only with animals. Human beings are also pushed to these limits. Entire societies have been subjected through hunger, poverty, or fear, forced to renounce ideals, words, identities, in exchange for a daily plate of food or a promise of minimal stability. The power that controls necessity ends up controlling the will. What some call voluntary submission is nothing but survival under suffocating conditions. That is why whoever controls scarcity also controls the dance of others, although behind every movement, the pain of humiliation silently survives. Donald Trump is starving universities and demanding that they change their way of thinking if they want to continue their research, so in the not-so-distant future science will change its opinion about transgender and non-binary people simply to be allowed to keep working. This is not a remote possibility. It is not an apocalyptic speculation. It is the logical conclusion of what is already happening. Only a few months are left before transgender and non-binary people become victims of a science that will change its opinion because they will do whatever is necessary to have Donald Trump let them keep working. This will not stop on its own. It will accelerate. It will escalate. It will deepen beyond limits we cannot even imagine today. In a few months, science will change its opinion about transgender and non-binary people, and so will the rest of the world. It will not be immediate. It will not happen overnight. It will be a process of corrosion, of wear, of silent resignation. There will be articles disguised as new studies. There will be reports dressed up as objective advances. There will be social scientists, doctors, biologists, psychologists who will start saying that maybe, perhaps, possibly, who knows, everything previously known needs to be reconsidered. It will not be because they have found something new. It will be because hunger makes even the proudest monkey dance. It will be because without money there is no science. And without free science there are no rights. So preparation is necessary. Not to resist symbolically. Not to give heroic speeches on social media. Preparation is necessary to truly fight. To defend rights when official science begins to say that we are no longer what we are. To remind, again and again, those who want to forget it, that our lives do not depend on a president's mood, a government's blackmail, or an academy's starvation. This happens when transgender and non-binary groups do nothing to defend their rights, and when groups of cisgender gays betray the people who started their movement. It is not a coincidence. It is not an anomaly. It is a strategy. Divide and conquer. While they pit us against each other, while they distract us with petty internal miseries, while they allow some to sell out others for a seat at a table, the enemy advances. It is not accidental that the most privileged sectors of the community, those who already have their place secured, are the first to fall silent, to minimize, to justify what is happening. It is not accidental that those who should be fighting are instead making deals. The situation is much worse than you imagine. This is not just about budget cuts, censorship, or pressure. A new system is being built where science, education, and human rights will no longer be non-negotiable principles but commodities at the service of power. Every achievement gained over decades is being dismantled piece by piece, while part of society looks the other way or, worse yet, applauds. This is not a future threat. It is already happening. And if we do not react now, what today seems like a warning will tomorrow be an irreversible reality. It must be said clearly, this is not a discussion. This is not a debate. This is not a review of theories. It is the execution of a process of hunger, fear, and symbolic extermination. It is an attempt to erase from history the lives, bodies, and existences that for half a century managed to wrest a bit of dignity from a system that never wanted to recognize us as valid. I do not care if this sounds exaggerated to timid ears. I do not care if some prefer to believe that everything will be solved with patience, dialogue, and good manners. History does not move by the desire for conciliation. It moves by force. And today that force is on the side of the power that wants to make us disappear. We cannot allow them to kill us again. We cannot allow science to become the weapon of our destruction. We cannot allow those who should be our allies to become our executioners. We must prepare to resist. We must prepare to survive. We must prepare to fight. Because if we do not do it now, there will be no later.